We believe simply restricting this card will not be enough to fix the issue. For this reason, we're choosing to ban this card instead of restricting it. This is a snippet of what Bandai said when addressing their reasons for the game's only banned card to date. In December of 2023, a new strategy was discovered using cards from completely different archetypes in an unexpected and unintended way. Zubamon is a promo created for the Legend Arms deck. It provides a stacking utility to help with the gacha nature of the deck back then, tucks itself under one of your Digimon, and gains a memory as a way to extend your plays. Seems fine so far. Sayo & Co, on the other hand, is a tamer created for the Grace Novamon deck. At the start of your opponent's turn, it plays a Digivolution source from one of your Digimon with a Nightclaw or Lightfang trait with the same level as a Digimon is played from, and immediately DNA Digivolve. That sounds confusing, but its main purpose is to play out the level 6 Apollomon from the level 6 Dianamon sources, or vice versa, and immediately DNA Digivolve into Grace Novamon. Now, while the Digimon that you play the source from has to have the Nightclaw or Lightfang trait, the actual source that you play doesn't. So people discovered that you could play out Zubamon from the sources of a level 3 Digimon with the trait, so a Coronamon or a Lunamon, for example. If you have another Digimon in play with the Legend Arms trait, you'll gain 2 memory and then immediately tuck it. This means if you have multiple Sayo & Co tamers on board, then you can do this multiple times. While this just sounds like a cool combo to gain some memory, you have to bear in mind that this happens at the start of your opponent's turn. If you happen to gain more memory than you pass them to, their turn gets skipped entirely. And you can do this every turn. Once the loop is established, it's impossible to break unless you misplay. This combo made it to the top 4 of a DC1 tournament in Japan, and that caught Bandai's attention. They immediately stepped in and created the first ever banned pair in the game, which essentially means there's 2 cards. If you play one of them, you can't play the other. They pair banned Sayo & Co with the Zubamon, as is natural, but they also pair banned it with BT13 Keenan, who gains a memory when a Digimon is played by an effect on your opponent's turn, and Starter Deck Matt, who gains a memory whenever you discard a card, so you could play out, for example, BT4 Labramon, draw a card, discard a card, tap Matt for a memory. So why am I talking about this? Bandai's already addressed this, we've already got the banned pair, problem sorted, right? Well, recently another turn skip loop was discovered. While it's not as consistent as the Zubamon loop that we've already discussed, these kinds of play patterns shouldn't exist within the game. Let me run you through it. BT11 Mirage Galgamon is a card that gains a memory for every 4 cards in the opponent's hand whenever a card is added to it on either turn by an effect. BT13 Galmon has both players draw a card whenever it's played. Both these cards synergize very well, they're part of the same archetype. That makes sense. It's only when you bring in cards from other archetypes that it really becomes a problem. BT13 Homer Yushima is a card designed for the fish deck. Not a competitive deck by any means, but quite a fun one for people who enjoy that playstyle. It allows you to play out a blue level 3 Digimon when he's played from the sources of one of your Digimon. And whenever you play a blue Digimon, you can suspend him to place a blue level 4 or lower Digimon from your hand as its bottom Digivolution card. It's not competitively viable, but it's a fun addition to the deck. However, what would happen if we were to play out a Lunamon, and then use Homer to place the Gaomon under it while we have a Mirage in play? Initially, not much. But when we bring the Sayo & Co tamer into the mix, this is where it all starts to get a bit shaky. At the start of your opponent's turn, because Lunamon has the Nightfang trait, you can play out the Gaomon from underneath it. That will draw both players a card. Since a card was added to your opponent's hand by an effect, you'll gain a memory for every 4 cards in their hand. Are you seeing the problem here? This all happens at the beginning of the opponent's turn, so like with Zubamon, this can turn skip. Now, the reason that I think this loop is even worse than the Zubamon loop is that the Zubamon loop has a chance to fail. If you hit security bad, you lose your Digimon, loop's broken. But with this one, there's another issue. You see, at the end of the turn that the Galmon is played, it returns to your hand, and then the Lunamon returns to your hand at the beginning of your turn to gain you 2 memory. So if you add in BT17 Ancient Garurumon, whenever the Lunamon returns to your hand, your opponent adds the top card of their security to their hand, meaning that if you can establish this as part of the loop, you don't even need to swing at security. You just sit there doing the combo as your opponent adds the cards from their security to their hand every turn, and then you swing for lethal once they run out. It's clear to me that Sayo and Co is the main problem card here, and it encourages degenerate deck building and degenerate loops. And I'm sure there's even more combos that it facilitates out there that I'm not familiar with. In this example, what do we pair restrict it with? Mirage? Galmon? Homer? There's other cards that do the same as these. If Bandai doesn't step in and address the problem at its source, then we could end up having Sayo and Co pair banned with 20 different cards. The initial Zubamon loop relied on you having multiple Sayo and Co's, especially if your opponent had a memory setter who sets them to 3, then you need to gain 4 memory, so you need to have multiple Sayo and Co's. But with the Mirage variant of the loop, you don't need to have more than one. One is all that you need. So this is why I believe that EX5 Sayo and Co should be the second card in the game to be completely banned, restricted to 0 copies per deck. Now I know what you're thinking. Won't this negatively affect the Grace Nova deck? Why should they be punished for infinite loops if they're not playing it? Well, first off, as a big Ugomon stan, I feel the concern. But honestly, most of these decks have cut out the Grace Novamon top end of the deck anyway, focusing instead on using the Red Co and Sayo tamer instead to do pretty insane combos, not degenerate combos, but pretty insane. We're seeing more and more decks use the archetypes cards, but not have that top end. So Sayo and Co doesn't really even appear anymore in Grace Novamon decks, since it's not necessary, which relegates it purely to the domain of degenerate infinite loops. I hope you agree. If you don't, let me know why in the comments. I'd like to see some discussion on this. But I think it's about time that we have another card hit the 0. And where we're at now in the game, I think Sayo and Co is the perfect contender for that. Thank you for watching.